Welcome to Cord Cutting This Week, episode number 4, recorded May 24th, 2019. This is the show where we break down some of the biggest stories happening in the world of cord cutting in depth every week here, typically on Thursday. This week on Friday, due to a power outage over at Jess's house. So we got power. We're back. So thank you to everybody who hung in here for one more day for the show. Today we have a ton to cover. Hulu Ceo opens up about what he basically, paraphrasing, called a mistake of the user interface. PlayStation Vue may have the most satisfied subscribers, Sling TV building new Air TV models, Roku's dominance, and more. First though, Jess, you got power. Are you okay
back. I'm back online, thank goodness. What a day I had yesterday.
It's good to have you here. We had quite a week too over here at Cord Cutters News. It's good to be home after all the traveling. Didn't know what to do myself being back for a week. But a lot has happened this week. We got some leaks with new Sling TV products we're going to cover in a minute, and more that I could cover here in this podcast. But I wanted to let everybody know who's watching this on YouTube or listening to us that we do have an app for iOS, Android, Amazon tablets. Now, if you're watching our daily updates, these are some of the biggest stories, but not all the stories we cover every day and like this every week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any, check out our Cord Cutters News app. You can search for Cord Cutters News on iTunes, the Google Play Store, or Amazon's Fire tablet app store, and you can find out all the best stories. It's got some cool features. A reduced number of ads. There's less ads on the app than the mobile website. You can favorite articles if you find a guide that you think is really helpful. You can favorite them, download them for offline reading, a dark mode, adjust the size of the text, and more. If you like the app, hey, do me a favor, give us 5 stars on iTunes or Google Play or Amazon. Helps us out a lot. But I'll put a link to that in the show notes down below. If you're listening to this in the podcast, you can find it over at cordcuttersnews.com in the post about this episode. So now that we got that out of the way, let's dive into it because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, story number 1. Hulu CEO gave a really good interview this week with Peter Kafka. I have a last name people butcher, so my apologies if I butchered that, Peter. He talked about so many different topics. I really encourage you to listen to that podcast or read the transcript they posted, link in our post. But one of the big things he talked about was paraphrasing that that it was a mistake to not offer a traditional grid guide and that Hulu's user interface isn't intuitive. Now, I believe, I forgot to check this beforehand, but this particular CEO, Randy Free, was not the CEO at the time that the Hulu's live TV service was being developed. He was not the CEO when this app was being developed, the current Hulu app. He's come in later. He's been moving very quickly on it. He hired in a former TiVo executive who kind of ran the TiVo department. And now they have a whole new user interface coming out. More of a Netflix-like grid style with all the different shows on there, because I often talk to people from Hulu who use Hulu and like, there's not a lot of content here. I think it was because you couldn't easily find the content. It wasn't like this massive library. It's like one show or one movie being displayed on your TV at a time. And I do love when people do different things, try to find different ways to do things. But when I had an interview with Hulu staff last year, we were talking off the record afterwards, and they asked me. And my argument was, I told them, people have been using a traditional grid guide for 30 years, right? This is what they're used to. Even before there were dedicated boxes, there was that old channel guide, the TV guide channel that would scroll all what's happening. Who here always remembers looking away and then looking back to realize you just missed the channel you wanted to see?
You have to sit for another 3 minutes until it cycles through.
Yeah, so I think, if you look back in the 80s and 90s, those channels even had the, quote, episode or grid guide, we'll call it. So I think people are so used to it, not offering it was a mistake. Sling TV did the same thing where they started off without one, later brought it back. What do you think, Jess?
I think you're right. This is something that we hear a lot from readers and emails and things. It's the biggest complaint that I think I've heard about Hulu is that it's just really difficult to find things. And I guess I kind of agree. I use Hulu. I love it. But I agree that I spend a lot of time kind of browsing through the different categories trying to find things instead of just having them displayed for me like you would on Netflix. So something I thought was interesting, I also listened to this podcast episode, And he talked about how he thinks that this is where we're going. He thinks that eventually people will have the same kind of interface that Hulu has now. But he thinks it was just too soon. It was too big of a jump for people. Do you agree?
I definitely think there's a point to that. Now, I think that the Hulu user interface needs some tweaks. It needs to show more data at once. It needs more content.
Definitely.
But, you know, let's be honest, the traditional episode guide is easy to look at. The grid guides are quick and easy and you're comfortable with it. But it's not always the most effective way to access all the on-demand content and all the other methods out there. So I do agree with him that I think that that's not the end game where we're going. Now, I do think that maybe some type of hybrid between the two may be where we end up.
Definitely.
But yeah, you know, the idea that what we have for TV now is what we're going to have forever and that's the best way to do it is just not... Yeah, it's just not the truth. It's kind of like those arguments that the cost of TV should never go up. Well, in reality, everybody likes a pay raise. Everybody likes a little bit more money. Inflation's reality. While technological evolution's a reality too. So...
Yeah.
Here's a question I asked yesterday during our daily show. What do you love with the current user interface that you hope they don't get rid of? Anything you really want them to keep?
Something I like about Hulu is that it's so visual. On a lot of streaming services, I think it's just the grid where it's only the type. I really like whenever I can see the picture and I can kind of sort of like judging a book by its cover, but I can kind of see just through the graphic whether or not it might be something that I'm interested in. I think that's something that they can keep. And like you said, that would be like a hybrid situation where they still have the graphics, but in a grid format maybe. Yeah,
you know, Hulu is a very beautiful, very easy on the eyes user interface, so I hope they keep some of that. I do like a lot of the cool things they're doing, like during sports where you have this whole section where you can favorite teams and do...
Yeah, definitely.
You know, so there's a lot of really good content here. A lot of people are like to just get upset at the Hulu app or the people who develop it. But I think they did a lot of really cool revolutionary content that you're seeing other people copy. I think bringing in some more of the traditional content to it with the grid guide coming back and the ability to see more content on screen at once will make it even better.
I think so too.
So, next story up of the day. Actually, any last thoughts on that real quick?
Nope. Just that I love Hulu. I think they're moving in the right direction. Really like the interview. If you haven't listened, definitely go give it a listen. We put a link in a couple of stories yesterday. All right.
Well, let's jump into the next story of the day. And this one I find very interesting. And I think that a lot of people are going to disagree with this one. But according to a report from the American Consumer Satisfaction Index, they have put PlayStation Vue as the live TV streaming service with the most satisfied customers. Now, not by a dramatic, huge jump there at all, but they do lead with 78% of their subscribers saying that they are satisfied with PlayStation Vue. Hulu, which wasn't broken out from Hulu Live and Hulu On Demand.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, they came in at 76. YouTube, again, not broken out, 75. Sling TV at 74, and DirecTV now at 69%. What's really interesting about this is the fact that when you look at cable, the most satisfied cable subscriber in traditional pay TV, we'll call it, was UVerse TV with 69% satisfaction, with the average cable subscriber being 62% satisfied, we'll call it. Surprise you at all, Jess? Does this line up with what you have seen?
I'm not surprised at all. I think cable is always going to have its people. I mean, in our industry, we kind of know that cable is, I guess, slowly dying. But cable will always have its people that will keep using it. But I don't think that necessarily means that people are satisfied with it. I think that something that's great about cord cutting is that you can pick and choose the streaming services that you want to use. So you can make yourself more satisfied with what you're getting. With cable, it's kind of like, this is what you have. Are you happy or not? It doesn't really matter. So I'm not surprised to see this. I'm actually surprised that the numbers for cable were as high as they were.
They definitely go down quick after that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but that 69% was higher than I expected.
I agree with you there. You know what I found interesting, a lot of people pointing this out, is really when you look at PlayStation Vue, even as far down as DirecTV on the list, there is not much of a difference. There's a 10-point swing.
Right,
Taking statistical 3-5% error. I'm not sure what the error margin on this particular study was. But most of these services are all basically statistically tied at the top. You know, the Hulu, YouTube TV, Sling TV, and PlayStation Vue. Now, this is the second time we've seen a report from a different organization that said that PlayStation Vue is the highest satisfaction. Mm-hmm. But it goes back to the argument that, you know, we just saw a report that said PlayStation Vue only has 800,000 subscribers, where YouTube TV, DirecTV Now still, and Sling TV and Hulu all have more. Mm-hmm. If they didn't call themselves PlayStation Vue, would they have a ton more customers? You know, I don't know. But it seems like the customer satisfaction isn't necessarily turning into subscribers. Sling TV, number one service out there. Hulu, number two. YouTube TV, DirecTV Now, right there. And then you get to PlayStation Vue in the subscriber count.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Now, one thing to remember, this study did stop polling people about roughly the week that the announcements start rolling out that DirecTV Now's price was going up, and it did stop before the price hike actually changed and the channel lineup changed and more. So it'll be interesting to see next year when this comes out. One thing about this that actually confused us at first report, this was a University of Michigan study. Now, on the report, you will see that Michigan owns the name and the trademark, but apparently the American Customer Satisfaction a few years ago was spun out to be an independent organization, not tied to the University of Michigan. So they get their own funding, though the name and the logo are still owned by the University of Michigan. I don't know. Their PR rep was trying to explain it to me and basically just said, we're independent, but we still somehow have ties there. So this was supposedly an independent one. So I know some people say, well, you know, can you trust it? It's a university. Apparently they are fully independent of that university.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, I did a little research while I was writing part of a story about this, and I didn't notice any bias from any direction. I was kind of double checking just to make sure there weren't like streaming services that were getting in there somehow, or cable companies. I didn't find anything. Yeah,
and the reason that it's important, because the last time this study came up, I believe Sony had some investment in the group that did the study, and a lot of people said that may mean that this isn't, you know, truthful information. Well, now we have a second one. Now, Sony does have some PR issues, but their customer service, when I've had to call customer service, is very good. So I guess I can see that. The channel lamp isn't bad. The apps are actually not that bad at all. Especially since if you have a newer Roku with the newer version of PlayStation Vue, you'll notice a huge improvement there. But you know, I guess I'm just surprised that people are satisfied, but they can't seem to get more subscribers.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you might be onto something with the name of it. I think the name PlayStation Vue is throwing people off. I know whenever I first started writing for you a couple years ago, I was very confused. I thought you had to have a PlayStation to use a PlayStation Vue. You
and many other people to this day, we still get messages and comments. I would get PlayStation Vue. It has what I want, but I don't own a PlayStation.
Right.
Yeah. So let's keep a close eye on this. I'm very interested to see what happens with DirecTV Now. I would very much like to see YouTube TV and Hulu broken out. Would dumping their parts there make that difference? Now, one thing I did want to point out with this survey is that Netflix is the most popular service there, or on-demand service. Now, we just looked at in this study live TV only. Pretty much everybody else covered the on-demand and the whole picture. We wanted to do something a little different there. So just to address any questions, because I know we got some about that, like how come you didn't include Netflix? Well, Netflix is not a live TV streaming service, and we focus on that. Anything you want to add real quick, Jess?
Nope, I am with you though. I'm interested to see how the numbers change now that pricing is changing a little bit and everyone has kind of announced some upcoming changes. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Definitely. All right, jumping into another live TV story. So Sling TV has had an Air TV device for a while, and I do have that box kind of right there behind me if you're looking for the current Air TV model. And it's a really cool device. I think it tries to do something different than just a regular streaming player because it allows you to attach an antenna to it There's a player, which is like an Android TV powered box that you can connect it to a TV, and it integrates your antenna and your Sling TV guide all into one. You can use it as a DVR for your antenna. So your ESPN and your ABC from your antenna are all in the same spot. Sling TVs really kind of bet that, hey, for millions of Americans, the antenna gives them everything they want for locals. It allows us not to pay for very expensive locals. And last year at the pay TV show, Sling TV CEO says by the end of this year, he expects the locals, end of 2019, to cost as much as $16 of your TV bill. So Sling TV said, hey, we can be the service for people that have an antenna who are happy with it, and we can use things like the Air TV. They later came out with what I call the Air TV Black Box, which is like a TiVo or a Sling box where it takes your antenna, connects to the Wi-Fi, and puts it on all your Sling TV apps for the most part. It does have a standalone Air TV app if you're not a Sling TV subscriber. There's no monthly fee. So that's what it is. Now we've learned that there's at least 2 new Air TV devices coming. One is a Air TV 2, which looks a lot like the standard Air TV black box. It looks like a device where you're going to plug in your antenna, and that device will stream your antenna out to multiple other devices, both in and out of your home. And then they have an Air TV device which doesn't connect an antenna to it. It looks like a Android TV stick / dongle look. It's an attached HDMI cord to dangle behind your TV. That looks like an upgraded version of an Android TV box with Sling that will boot directly into Sling TV and has Netflix. And according to reports, Amazon will be added this summer with all Android TV getting it. That looks like you could use these little cheap dongles for I believe it was $79.99 in the report.
Yep.
Can connect it to your TV and then stream your antenna throughout the entire home to these little cheap dongles. Some people have criticized it as the return of the cable box, that now, we're getting cable boxes again. Other people have said, I love this. I love the idea that when I turn on my TV, it boots right into the live TV. And then from there, if I want to go to Netflix, from there, if I want to go to Hulu, that's great. What do you think of what you're hearing from Sling with these new devices?
I think it's interesting. I feel like that's my answer for everything. Interesting. I kind of like the idea of it. I think that Sling is really onto something with keeping their prices lower and just saying, we're not here to bring you your local channels. You can get that somewhere else. But I think it's very smart for them to market it as putting everything into one place. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people will like it. It won't be for everybody, and that's okay. I think that they were smart to do it this way instead of kind of trying to compete more with like a Roku or an Apple TV. They're just saying that's not what we are. We're just trying to make it more convenient for you to have everything in one place. That was very, very smart of them.
To me, this kind of goes back to the 3 types of cord cutters. Now, This isn't generalizing this, but real quick. So when you look at how people primarily watch TV, I call it type 1s, people who primarily use live TV services. Now, you may have antenna, you may have on-demand ones, but your first go-to thing is a Sling TV, YouTube TV, DirecTV Now. Then there's, which I think is the largest, the on-demand people, who you may have a live TV service part of the year or all the year, but you primarily watch content on Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, etc. And then lastly, the people who go for the free stuff, the antennas, the Pluto TVs. Now, there's crossover in all these. But for that type 1 people who primarily watch, Sling TV, DirecTV Now, Hulu with Live TV, etc., this is really cool because it's a very cable-like experience. You turn on your TV, boom, there is wherever you were watching last, ESPN, whatever. So I love that concept there. I love the whole idea of it. And I think for me, people who want a very similar experience to cable, but for a fraction of the price, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And, here's the reality. If you have a Roku, a Fire TV, whatever, and you're happy, you don't need this Air TV device. But for somebody who would want something like that, my mom, my dad, something I could be like, hey, look, it's just like your cable. You turn on your TV, there it is. But look, this little sub-menu, here's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon later this summer, etc. So I hope it's a good device. We will be reviewing them. Of course, I'm keeping a close eye on it. So the Satellite Guys, which is, I guess, a site that kind of like Cord Cutters News, but covers the world of satellite, was invited to Dish's big event. They have a team event where they're partners, which are those Dish resellers and Dish employees, are invited, and they announce, here's the new products. He got a bunch of pictures of it, even a picture that shows a training slide that says this product will launch in June of this year. And he went on hands-on with it, said it was an improvement in power and performance of the device versus the older version. So sounds like we may, in the next couple of weeks, be hearing something about the Air TV.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, I think it's a great option for someone like our parents who are so used to cable and haven't yet committed to the idea of being a cord cutter. It's kind of like your introduction to it. You can still have everything that you want, but now you have all this extra stuff too. I think it's great. Exactly.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what's happening here with this. Exactly what does the Air TV 2 do different other than better Wi-Fi and slightly faster processor, it looks like. We'll see if there's any maybe here's the hard thing with these kind of leaks. We can see the hardware because it passed through FCC filings. Dave Zatz or zatsnotfunny.com, a great site he watches a lot of FCC filings and finds products like this going through. What we don't see during the FCC filing process is the software changes.
Yeah.
Is there new cool software features here to allow us to take advantage of that? We'll see. So if you're watching us on YouTube, real quick, do you use it, Air TV? What would you like to see in a second generation Air TV device? Leave us a comment. I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's keep on moving. Roku will reportedly earn $632.9 million in ads from 2020. We talked about how Roku's revenue is now majority ads and subscriptions. Roku is really moving into being an ad company. Very mysterious. A lot of people think of them as a hardware company, but the company's saying, okay, hardware is great. We're going to continue to make hardware, but we want to be the Google of devices, which is kind of funny because Google has their Android TV device. But they're basically like, hey, we'll give you a cheap device. We're not going to lose money on it, but we're not going to make money on it. And then when you watch ads on services like Pluto TV or Zumo or the Roku channel, we're going to get money. When you subscribe to stuff through the Roku channel or use your Roku account, we get a cut of that. And that actually makes them more money. Now, according to this, in 2019, they expect them to make $433 million, according to your marketer, and that will jump up to $632.9 million in 2020. I suspect that may be a low number, that they could do even more if things continue the way they're going. But this goes back to, how does Roku manage to sell streaming players for $29.99? The Roku Express is actually the updated version that came out last year, is actually a decent player. Yeah. How do they do that? Well, this seems to be how they do that. And it really, I don't know, to me, it really gives a in-depth look at what Roku's doing. So, anything jumped out at you in this story or about what Roku's CEO said about their ad revenue?
Again, not surprising. I think anyone that uses a Roku knows how that kind of all works. And I think for me, I love the Roku, and yeah, I would much rather pay less and get those extra ads and things, or give the money to Roku to make signing up for premium services easier. I have no problem with it. I think great for them. It makes sense. It's a good business model to sell those cheaper products. I think they're really hitting a good market with their price point. So yeah, I'm not really surprised, but like you said, I think that number is probably lowballing it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Roku does. Now, the interesting thing about Roku is they're technically not making a profit. It's kind of one of those fun things of accounting. They can move stuff around. Roku is investing heavily in R&D right now. They've hired a lot more people into R&D.
Interesting.
Question is for what? And it's probably not anything that's going to happen this year. But okay, so they have the hardware department moving along. My guess is Roku's primarily all those R&D people are in ad sales, the advertising side of their business. The streaming side, there's even been talk of a redo of the user interface in Roku to become more of a Fire TV-esque user interface, that the Roku channel is kind of an idea of what maybe their user interface may look like in the future. Does that freak you out at all? Are you worried about that?
Not really. I have been noticing more and more they're really pushing the Roku channel. That was something that I don't feel like I heard much about previously, and especially just in the last couple months. I don't know if you've noticed this too. I've just been hearing so much more about the Roku channel.
Which, with them making a majority of their money from ads and subscriptions, it makes sense. So now Roku, I mean, they made it very clear, we are still a hardware company. We're not leaving hardware. We're very, very happy. But Roku CEO has also said that the future of streaming is smart TVs, that Roku will be the white label OS that all these TV brands can build around, that they'll still make players, but as time goes on, TVs will become the biggest part of their business. So be very interested to see what happens. If you have a feature you would like to see added to Roku or user interface that changes, let me know. My number one thing I think they shouldn't change, one of the number one reasons I hear from people, is it's just so simple.
Yes.
People say it looks ugly, it's bland, but you know what? There's something to be said about an operating system that just works really well and quickly gets you to what you want to watch.
I agree. I want my streaming services to look nice, but I want my main menu to just be very, very simple.
And I mean, to me, HBO looks the same streaming on Apple TV as it does on Roku or the Fire TV. It's all about that A to B point from when I turn on my Roku to when I'm watching the final episode of Game of Thrones, for example.
Absolutely. Which neither of us has watched.
Which I have not watched, so no spoilers, please. So, yeah, keep an eye on this story. We'll be watching it very closely, but it's, very different approaches. Apple has a different approach. Amazon has a very different approach. They want you to buy stuff. Roku wants you to watch ads. Mm-hmm. So, and Apple seems to be, you pay a premium price. And we still put ads, but they're much more subtle.
Right.
So, we'll see. All right, last story of the day here. We're taking a look at the biggest lies in TV right now is that cable TV can give you everything you want on a single bill. This comes as an editorial piece I wrote over the weekend last week that I wanted to talk with Jess about. It goes back to the pay TV show last week. It's such an eye-opening experience to watch these cable executives talk about cord cutting. And analysts said this on stage. Executives said this on stage that, hey, cord cutters have to have all these different bills. We can give them one bill and they'll come back to cable TV for one bill. And you even saw this argument a little bit with Kim Komando's story that came out this week and was also published on the USA Today. Love Kim Komando. She's a great radio host that helps a lot of people with technology. Absolutely very nice person. Never met her, but she does a lot of great coverage. But she wrote a story called The Real Cost of Cord Cutting. And in it, she talks about how, and it's with what streaming companies don't want you to know. And she talks about things like, well, when you count in the cost of Disney Plus, CBS All Access, NBA League Pass, YouTube Premium, Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, it costs more than cable. Now, my argument with this is, things like CBS All Access, most people subscribe for the original content that's not available on cable. YouTube Premium, most people get that for the original content and the commercial or ad-free YouTube.com content. NBA League Pass, not available through cable. HBO, not available through cable, except as an add-on, just like with cord cutting. So this idea that cable can give you everything you want in the basic package to make it cheaper, I think for most people is just not true. If you like the content on CBS All Access, you want to watch the new Star Trek Picard show, I'm kind of excited. I grew up watching The Next Generation. Well, you can't watch that with Comcast or Spectrum. You would still need CBS All Access. And I think that's where most of these arguments fall short. The idea that you could get everything with cable with one bill nowadays isn't true. Handmaid's Tale, I can't tell you how many people are excited for that.
Yeah.
Disney Plus, a lot of that content on Disney Plus, guess what? Not available with cable. Not just the original content, but that back catalog stuff. You're not going to turn on cable and suddenly watch, Monsters, Inc. all the time playing whenever you want it.
Right.
So, am I missing something here, Jess? Am I just crazy?
No, this was another one. Our readers left some really good comments on this blog post, and I love reading what our readers have to say. And someone mentioned that she included the cost of renting, I don't even remember how many movies per month. And our reader commented and said, who's renting movies if I have all of these things that she's telling me I'm subscribed to, Netflix and Hulu and all these channels that have movies? I'm not renting movies, so take that out of the equation. I'm not subscribing to 25 streaming services, take 20 of those out of the equation. It's nuts.
No, I mean, even when I had cable and DirecTV back in the day, I still rented movies. Because guess what? I want to watch a recent movie that I didn't see in movie theaters. Not on cable.
Yeah, so that should not even be part of the equation, in my opinion. But
I will say I'm renting a lot less movies nowadays, now with Netflix, Hulu, Amazon subscriptions. There's just so much out there that I can't get to it. It has to be a movie that I have to really, really want to see that movie to go see it in movie theaters. And I have to really, really wanted to see it to rent it instead of just being like, it'll be on Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon someday in the next few years or whatever. But there's like 10,000 other movies I want to watch right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, you know,
I'm patient enough that I can wait a month for it to come out on Netflix.
Now, Kim Commando does have one thing right. You do need to do your research. You do need to do your math. And like I said at the end of my story, don't take my word for it. Don't take Kim Commando's word for it. Do your own research. Would you, ask yourself, if I went back to cable TV, would I really give up all my streaming services? Or would I want Netflix? Or would I want Hulu for The Handmaid's Tale or Stranger Things, etc.? So do that. Ask yourself that. Studies have shown that over half of cable subscribers do subscribe to one or more streaming services. So it seems like for most, no, they would not be able to get everything they want through a cable, especially those basic packages that people try to push as the comparison to cord cutting. So I'd love to know from you, how much are you saving? Do you agree with the Kim Commando, and others, and the cable executives? Kim Commando wasn't saying basically that you could completely give up streaming. But do you agree with the cable subscribers that you may be enticed to go back to cable for a single bill? Leave us a comment. Let us know. Anything you want to add there, Jess?
Well, I think the one other point that I wanted to make was, sure, the convenience of having one bill would be great, but all of my things are on auto pay. I have them all set up on one credit card, so once a month I pay that credit card bill and I'm done. So isn't that kind of the same thing?
And I think that's kind of where Apple TV and the Roku channel and Amazon channels is moving. That they want that single look, bill where, you have multiple services, but it's all paid through your iTunes account or your Roku account or your Amazon account. Sling TV's even moving into that. It's like, hey, a bunch of those add-on things are available through the Sling TV app, even if you're not a customer anymore. So again, though, not perfect. Cable wasn't built in a day. Cord cuttings, I read an article basically saying Apple TV is awful. It's, it's far from perfect. I'm like, yeah, it launched like 2 weeks ago. It's brand new. Give it a couple weeks. Hopefully maybe a couple years to really get around. Let's just be honest here. Technology takes time to make deals and improve. I don't know. That's my... I find it really funny when it's like, hey, there's a brand new service and we're going to be really upset about one minor little thing that's an annoyance. Okay. Apple TV app, not perfect, but it's an improvement over the situation we were in before.
Yep.
And that's what I'm happy about. Be better today than you were yesterday. Be better tomorrow than you were better today.
Agreed.
So anything to add there before we get into our recommendations of the week?
No, I'm good.
It's definitely a holiday weekend. So before we get into that, if you're about to cut out, thank you to everybody who's been watching the YouTube videos, downloading the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating. It really helps. But I hope you have a fantastic holiday. I get when I was in college, I worked at a gas station, so I know what it is like to work on Memorial Days and Labor Days and the rest. I hope you have a great weekend no matter what you're up to this weekend. Let's now dive into our recommendations. I wanted to recommend something on Netflix this week called World War II in Color, which is this really cool. I love history documentaries, and it's a really cool one because it takes a lot of the World War II film. Some of it was actually originally shot in color, but it wasn't really ever it wasn't a lot of that film. And then other ones, it looks like they've manually colorized it to be accurate to what it would look like. So it's kind of cool. It brings it from a black and white, we all grew up with World War II mostly as a black and white experience, to take it to give you the lush colors of the jungle that people were fighting in, to the barren, desolate, destroyed towns, and just to really I don't know, it made it much more real, maybe. And I've always enjoyed reading military history and reading history books in general, but there's something about seeing it in color that was really cool. So it's called World War II in color, available on Netflix. It's been there a while. Hope if you haven't watched it, check it out.
Definitely.
What would you recommend, Jess?
Mine is a completely different category. I was thinking about the holiday weekend. People might be inside binge watching a show, and I have one for you. It's called Dead to Me, and it's also on Netflix. This is something that a lot of our readers suggested to me because they know the kinds of shows that I'm into, some like drama, mystery, comedy mixed in, and this one was amazing. It stars Christina Applegate, and it follows, it starts out with her going to a grief counseling meeting, and she makes a friend there, and things just get crazy after that. This whole mystery unravels, and it's just a great show. I binge watched it. I've already seen the entire season. A lot of our readers have too, so I highly recommend that for the holiday weekend.
My wife has been watching it. She absolutely loves it. I caught a little bit of it. It looks good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I haven't seen enough to recommend it, but from what I've seen, it looks like a cool show.
Yeah, really good.
All right. Hey, if you have a recommendation you want to throw out for us to check out, I'll be honest with you, I am really looking forward to this holiday weekend. I'm going to put my feet up and play with my daughter and maybe watch TV. So maybe I'll try to catch up on some of that with my wife.
Definitely.
But I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Don't forget about our app. I'll put a link to it in the show notes down below. Check it out so you don't miss any of our stories. Because, again, this was just a fraction of what we covered. I mean, especially with Jess on, we've been covering a lot more of the world of cord cutting recently. And so check out, we have big things in the works. Don't forget Monday, if you like the weekly cord cutting Today shows that happen Monday through Friday. Skipping Monday because of the holiday. We'll be back on Tuesday for the daily show. So I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Take care, everybody.
Bye.